Today's lesson is all about finding the missing dimensions in a figure. So what I mean by dimensions are like radius and height. Like in a rectangle problem, if you knew the area, what would the length be? So these problems, we're going to start off knowing the result, knowing the volume, and working our way backwards. There's a few steps we're going to take in every problem. Number one, we're going to write the formula we need. All right, so make sure you have your formula sheets ready. In step two, we're going to fill in our known quantities. So we're going to do known quantity. There'll be more than one probably. All right, and then step three, welcome back to the world of my colored pens. 3 is going to be solve for missing. Now I'm going to try to write these in these colors and every problem on the page so we know what we're doing in every step. All right, so we're into the first one. Kind of an introduction from just basic circles. If the areas of a circle is 49 pi square units, what is its radius? So the first thing to notice is that we know in blue, area is 49 pi, and that pi is in terms of pi. That's actually going to help making our math so much easier, and we'll see that this lesson. Leaving it in terms of pi makes the math easier. So the area formula of a circle is pi r squared. So I know, that's my formula, check. Now my known quantities, I know my area is 49 pi. So I'll say 49 pi is pi r squared. All right, I filled in my known quantity for area. So now I can think of solving this equation. Well, what's my variable? My missing amount is radius. I do not know the radius. So I'm going to solve for that. So now this is just like a regular equation, but it just looks a little bit scary. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to get r all by itself. So I'm going to divide by pi. And that's going to look as simple as just no more pi, because it's all being multiplied. So now I'm left with 49 equals r squared. So I have to ask myself, what times itself gets me 49? And that answer is 7. 7 times 7 is 49. But you might be wondering, all right, that's all well and good, but if I don't have a calculator, how do I figure that out? I'm sorry. Or if I don't have knowledge of square roots, how do I figure that out? So I'm going to show you how to do that on a calculator. So I'm going to go to the Desmos Scientific Calculator, and we'll see what that looks like. So again, there's my Desmos Scientific Windows. Here's all my tabs saying nothing updated last night, which was awesome. So if I know that r squared is 49, so I know that r squared is 49. So I know that. So I gotta figure out, what does r equal? So what is the inverse of squaring a number? The opposite of squaring a number is finding the square root. They're right next to each other. So I do the square root of 49, I find my answer is 7. So I'm going to use that square root of 49 to get me my answer of 7. All right. And I might also be thinking, well, doesn't negative 7 times 7, I'm sorry, doesn't negative 7 times negative 7 equal 49 too? Wouldn't that work? And like, yeah, it does. But really, length cannot be negative. So we have to deal with just the positive numbers. You will have to use a calculator at some point because some of these will be ugly numbers, possibly. Okay. So we're just gonna go through all the problems on this page, and please feel free to ask questions when you have them. Don't just struggle through and say, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Follow up. I'd be happy to answer and clarify questions. So here's number 2 already done out, so we'll just talk through it. So number 2 is very similar. The area of the circle was 100 pi. So what is the radius? Again, taking the formula, area equals pi r squared. We know that the area is 100 pi. So 100 pi is A. So I know 100 pi equals pi r squared. So all right, same thing. I can divide both sides by the pi, and I get just 100 equals r squared. So what number times itself gets me 100? What squared gets me 100? So is it 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3? No, it's 10 times 10. Because 10 squared gets me 100. And again, on my Desmos calculator, I could figure that out by typing in. I could do the square root of 100, and I would get 10. All right? So try the next one on your own. I won't walk you through the next circle one, but try that next circle one. If the area of a circle is 80 square units, what's its radius? So we made it this far, no problems. 80 equals pi r squared, because 80 is my area, but notice there's no pi. So when I divide by pi in my next step, when I do that, 80 divided by pi, nothing cancels. I have to go to my calculator and see what 80 divided by pi gets me. And it gets me 25.46 approximately. So I know that r squared has to equal 25.46. So in my head, I'm thinking, all right, I know that 5 squared is 25. So it's got to be 5 point something, a little bit more than 5. So let's do the square root of 25.46. And here's those decimals come into play. 5.0 rounds to 5.05. Perfect. So radius is 5.05. All right. So you're gonna have to get comfortable using that square root key. It's also on your phone calculator. The square root key is also on your phone calculator if you need it. All right. But on some calculators, you have to type the number and then the square root. So on the phone calculator, sometimes, and I think it's true for the iPhone calculator, I think mine does this, you have to type 25.46 and then the square root key in that order. All right, so just be mindful of that. So now we're going to see what this looks like in terms of our volume formula. So remember, our 3 steps are know the formula, and some of you really need to make sure you're looking at the formulas and actually trying to commit them to memory. Formula. The known quantities. What do you already know? And then solve for the missing quantity. Then you have to solve and figure out that last piece. All right, so here we have a cylinder. I think today we're only dealing with cylinders, so that's good. So if the cylinder has a radius of 3 and a height of 5, what is the volume? So here, my formula is volume equals pi r squared height. And we know the radius of 3, and we know the height of 5. So this is a nice normal one where we know the radius and we know the height. So we can do V is pi times 3 squared times 5. And get my volume is 45 pi And that's going to be something in the neighborhood of 140 maybe? Let's see. Get my calculator. 45 pi. 141.37. All right, so we figured out the volume there. So now on the next page, we're going to get into what this is going to look like solving for a dimension. So I had to change question 5 because I messed it up. But if a cylinder has radius of 3 and a volume of 162, what is the height? So let's see, my known information is 162 pi for my volume, and I know the radius is 3. So step 1 is formula. The cylinder. My second step, what do I know? I know the radius is 3 and the volume is 162. So I've got 162 pi equals pi times 3 squared times h. And now I can solve. 162 pi equals pi times 9 times h. So now solve. Okay, well I can divide by pi. So I have 162 has to equal 9 times the height. So now we know how to solve this equation. If 162 equals 9h, divide by 9, h equals what? That was not right. 18. I didn't put units on this. Very bad, Mr. Roboto. So my height here would be 18. So I'm actually going to skip over 6 and 7 for now. You can try those on your own. I'm going to look at number 8 just now. So the volume of this cylinder with a height of 40 is 160 pi units. So we want to figure out, well, what is missing here? Volume is pi r squared height. That's our formula. And we know the height. And we know the volume. The volume of the cylinder with height 40 is 160. So the volume is 160 pi. So 160 pi equals pi r squared times 40. So we do not know radius. So again, we are solving. We plugged in what was our known. We have to figure out what is missing. So we can divide to get, these are all multiplication problems on each side, so we can just divide. So we're going to divide by pi to start off with. So I have 160 equals r squared times 40. And I want to figure out r, so I'm going to divide by 40, because it's being multiplied, we'll divide by 40. With r squared equals 160 divided by 40, let's see, 16 divided by 4 is 4. If r squared is 4, what does r have to be? The square root of 4. What times itself gets you 4? 2. So my radius has to be 2. And I just wrote units for all of these, so like units, I guess. All right. So that should be enough to get you trying on your exit slip. Don't be alarmed if you didn't quite get it today. just make sure you follow the 3 directions. Write your formula. Yes, write. Write in what is your known quantities. And write in what is your missing, and then solve for what is your missing quantity, all right? I color-coded to try to help you make sense of the steps, because I know it can be a little confusing when it gets more algebraic like this. So please just be patient with it. Watch the video again if you need to, and just give it a try. Nothing's being graded as of yet. So even if you're like, I didn't get this today, it's okay. We'll keep trying with it as long as you are trying, okay?